Welcome to Innovation in Government from SOF Week, presented by Carasoft. I'm your host, Francis Rose. Two autos define the special operations space today: autonomy and automation. This year's SOF Week 2026 featured discussions and examples of how special operators are using both to fulfill their missions. On this edition of Innovation in Government, you'll meet military leaders, civilian decision makers, and industry experts describing the future of mission success for special operators. First, the commander of U.S. Southern Command, General Francis Donovan. He told Armed Services Committee members on Capitol Hill recently one of the goals of Southcom's new Autonomous Warfare Command is to, quote, greatly increase lethality, all-domain awareness, and data sharing for U.S. and partner forces. At SOF Week 2026, General Donovan tells me he calls his vision for execution the Olympic rings.
The requirements coming from the Joint Force Forward, like in U.S. Southern Command, those requirements enter back into the Pentagon requirements process through their services. And that's where the Olympic rings don't always touch. And so for autonomous warfare, and the fact that I believe autonomous warfare has to be joint warfare. Otherwise, we have self-flying helicopters and self-driving tanks doing their own thing, but we're not maximizing autonomy. And so really coming into command, we wanted to maximize the fact that we want to drive a demand signal to the Defense Autonomous Warfare Group of the truly joint approved requirements from the combatant commander to then have those requirements compete for resources, but also use the dog as our forum to work with vendors, to tech, VCs, to do best of breed. And then we just make sure our demand signal's tight. We have our operators tied with that tech dev. Then we can bring those capabilities forward into Southcom. And as we kind of were thinking, Francis, is that, as we look at Southcom as according to the national security strategy, we are a priority effort. But I don't always need a carrier strike group. What I need is the right balanced force, tailored forces for our missions at hand. And I think autonomy is going to be the backbone of that. And so the Autonomous Warfare Command will be our forward edge to not only work with the dog, but at the same time, synchronize joint autonomous effects for the supported JTF commander and U.S. Southern Command.
I want to come back to that idea of what you need later in the conversation, but I'm reading from the Military Times. Once fully operational, the new command will be tasked with engaging autonomous, semi-autonomous, and unmanned platforms to counter threats across domains. What will it take for you to become fully operational? What's that look like in your view?
Well, we are very quickly here. We'll come initially operation capable. We're bringing in a great colonel from the United States Marine Corps, intel officer with special operations background, and Colonel Ian Fletcher will be our first commander of the Southcom Autonomous Warfare Command. We're going to build out the shell, but we're also don't want to do brick and mortar right away, because this is where we have to really kind of ensure that if you embrace autonomous warfare, how do you actually leverage the great capabilities that are already in place and a lot of great tech dev that's happening around us, and then centralize the demand, centralize the movement forward, let our components move forward, but then have that bow that brings it together. So initially we'll be IOC relatively quickly because we have the right commander, and the core staff we're carving out. Get the commander time on the ground to get a good feel for what each of our components are doing, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force now, and then how to bring that together, then accelerate. And then we'll end up, I think within 6 months, be almost at FOC, because again, it's not a command that we think J1 through J10, and it's very different and dynamic. Maybe an example of what we experienced in the dog. Small team moving fast, connecting, driving demand signal, and then delivering a product.
So back to that point about what you need, your mission is shifting in Southcom. You're talking about drug trafficking, obviously very high profile now, but at the same time, thinking about other things that are going on in the Southern Hemisphere.
Really?
Russia and China, obviously always a priority for the department. How does that inform the way that you're going about structuring not just something like this for command in particular,
right,
but more broadly across your entire command?
Francis, it's a great question. And really, if you think about it, to make autonomous warfare work, we focus a lot on, around us today, a lot of platforms. We think about the thing that flies or swims or subsurface or goes into a cave. that's a platform, and we'll iterate on those and use them and move on. It's really the data architecture environment, the how we tie those across our hemisphere and across the Southcom AOR, how we create the right data flows so whatever service comes in, that tool, we can use it effectively. So I'll start with saying that the first push on this is to ensure that we're creating the right architecture that we can use autonomous warfare to its maximum extent. The reason why I bring it up is because back to, I think, really answer the question is that when I've met with partners across our theater, and right now I've met with about 27 of our chiefs of defense, my counterparts, really, really good teammates. A lot of the conversations we have are about domain awareness, maritime or air domain awareness. You see further over the horizon in the maritime domain, or be able to go up under large ungoverned spaces in the land domain and not only track aircraft moving through their space that aren't registered, or identify pop-up clandestine airfields that nefarious actors are using. So really, we want to really use the Autonomous Warfare Command as also a partner engagement platform. So you think about it, if we have a autonomous, one of the projects we're pushing in first is, we call it the Hemispheric Maritime Pursuit Craft. So a craft that can go 2,000 nautical miles unmanned. It's collecting data the whole time, domain awareness. The partner gets it, we get it, JADF South gets it. And so we're assisting with our partners' domain awareness. We're all getting smarter. We're meshing the data together for whatever finish we're looking for. Now, just to pivot off it, and I'll kind of close this out by what's interesting about looking at the counter DTO fight, designated terrorist organization fight. What I really believe is, I believe the environment that these DTOs flourish in, it's the same environment that these maligned actors like China and Russia and Iran also want to create to flourish in. A area in a host nation that is almost lawless, that they can do illegal mining, they can influence, they can do dual use infrastructure. So what we're seeing is a bit of a nexus, that the more we create domain awareness and identify what those nefarious actors from DTOs, from point of production to point of distribution in the networks, but at the same time, we're picking up the threads of what these maligned actors are doing in those exact ungoverned spaces. Domain awareness helps identify those actions and develop counters.
We just have a couple of minutes left. I want to go back to the SAWC. How will you determine the mix of vehicles that you need in that fleet?
I think we have to look at what our partners are able to ingest, because again, really quickly, I think about that we will be always in an away game, in the sense that, so if it's a boat, it comes from where, launched by who, maintained by who. Those are real questions we have to look at. Logistics are the backbone of everything we do. And I'm an infantry officer, special operations officer. Logistics, it's about logistics. So where we can launch, operate, sustain from will determine our demand signal. So if we have partners, we have systems we could use from our 4 locations because they have great partner relations, or we would like to give to our partners to use. It'll all be based on those ABO requirements that are always there. And then from there, what's the demand signal based on how many systems we can employ and how we synchronize those effects.
Gerhard Pilcher is Vice President of Growth, Data, and AI Practice at Mantech. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Francis.
A lot of people say they're doing AI, air quotes. Where are they going wrong in your view, Gerhard?
Yeah, doing AI is kind of a funny term. It's like saying I'm doing an M4. M4 is a tool you can use in the mission, and AI should be the same way. We need to start with the mission first. Where can we enhance the mission? Sometimes that's harder to think about, rather than going, hey, I've got this new AI thing. Where can I apply it? And generally you get it wrong because you haven't thought about the mission first.
Yeah, and it strikes me too, the answer then, if you think mission first, isn't necessarily always AI.
That's correct. That's not. It's not always. Just like M4. It's not going to help you in an underwater demolition mission, potentially. Maybe as a backup weapon once you get above water, but not much use underwater.
One place where AI does seem to be helping people is bringing data together that's in a lot of different places. How are you seeing that working well, and what are the organizations that are doing that well doing to succeed?
Sure. One of the biggest problems with information in different areas is really a people problem. I don't trust the release of my information. Now we have ways that we can apply algorithms to information where it is rather than having to move information. But I think really the complexity and speed of information just overwhelms human systems. So if we think about it from a kill chain point of view, where we have information, decisioning, and targeting, I think AI and what we think of new AI, where we have large language models and reasoning agents and things like that, they really help us to take all that information using traditional machine learning algorithms and make it more clear so that we can have a good mission outcome. And so it reduces the complexity, in other words. But then we can now apply LLMs and the modern AI so that decision makers can now ask questions. Instead of looking at 400 or 500, dashboards, they can ask more natural questions, which is part of the training. How do I form my questions to get the responses I need out of AI? So that's one area. Also, with the reasoning agents, it can help them think about new possibilities. It still requires a human to guide it, but now that the agents can see all this fast information and have a reasoning logic behind them, they may, in the moment, because things are happening at speed now, this kill chain is getting shorter and shorter. How do we help them see more possibilities they might not have seen just in that moment when we need that decision made? And then if you think about the targeting, now the AI systems, especially as we deploy them out toward the edge, as the situation is changing, we may have made a targeting decision, but in that short period of time, something may have changed because our adversaries are trying to throw us off as well. Now AI can adapt more readily than we could in sort of fixed systems that only knew one or two things.
How is all of this impacting the way that organizations need to think about their talent and the skills that that workforce needs to have to be able to deliver on the vision that you just described?
Sure, yeah, thanks. I think that couple of things. One, as I mentioned just a moment ago, how do I begin to prompt the system to get the answers, the best answers I can out of the AI? So how do I train the people in that chain to do that well? But I think the other thing we miss a lot of times, we think because AI is a powerful tool, I can just put it in somebody's hand that has no training in AI. But behind the scenes, you really need those AI expertise and that AI engineers to help build the systems that then feed the people who are going to interact with those systems. So it's a little bit of training there, but I think as you go farther out in the field, the systems need to be designed so the operator is just using a thing. It's a thing that helps them get the mission outcome thereafter. And they don't care that there's AI behind that. So they need to be trained in what that thing can and can't do and how much uncertainty is in that thing. But I think SOCOM operators are the people in the world that deal with the most uncertainty that's life and death of any other job that could be. And they get comfortable with that, but they know how much uncertainty there is. So these systems need to help them understand that so that they can have confidence in deploying it in the mission space.
Joseph Salazar is Senior Product Marketing Manager for Bastille. Welcome. It's great to talk to you. A lot of discussion at this show and at other conferences that I've been to about base security. Now, for the first time, leaders are telling me domestic bases too. They're thinking about security solutions. What's the threat landscape look like for military installations now from your view?
Well, having been in the military for 22 years, retired, the last 8 years of my career was cybersecurity. And so I worked in a lot of SCIFs. We've paid attention to a lot of the devices that were coming into a SCIF, but wireless has changed a lot of that. You are now authorized to bring Bluetooth-enabled health devices like glucose monitors, hearing aids. Those are authorized, but how do you keep wireless devices that don't belong in a secure facility or even in sensitive spaces that aren't necessarily secure? How do you keep them out, right? Because most places have a policy around wireless devices. The Air Force has recently banned Meta glasses, one of which I'm wearing right now. But that wireless landscape has really altered how you look at security because you can't stop wireless with guards, guns, and gates. It goes anywhere it wants. So that has really become sort of a focus for a lot of security is how do you deal with the wireless? Because every soldier is going to have wireless earbuds, phones, Every person's got at least 2-3 devices, smartwatches that are Wi-Fi enabled or have a SIM card. So wireless has become real big in terms of a focus for security.
Are each one of those things, each one of those items, a threat vector? Is there a potential intrusion opportunity there for the bad guys?
Sure, absolutely. The reason why the Air Force banned meta glasses for anyone in uniforms is because they walk around a lot of sensitive equipment like planes and stuff, and they might take videos or pictures that get leaked out and that could provide strategic information to adversaries. Bluetooth wireless earbuds. If you leave a Bluetooth wireless earbud on a conference room table, hidden someplace, and then have it recording on your phone, you've listened in on sensitive conversations that they're not aware of.
Yeah.
Right? Anything that with Bluetooth can be used as an attack vector, right? There are devices that are specifically designed around that. Wi-Fi is notorious for being used for wireless attacks, and you no longer require proximity in order to do a wireless attack. There was an incident back in 2024 that Volexity talked about, which was dubbed the nearest neighbor attack, where an adversary out of Russia compromised an entity, an organization, by hacking the organization across the street and using their Wi-Fi to attack the organization wirelessly.
You taught me a new acronym before we went on the air, WIDS, Wireless Intrusion Detection Systems.
Yes.
What do they detect and how do they protect what they detect against?
So wireless intrusion detection systems are designed to detect wireless devices. Now, the traditional WIDS only looked at Wi-Fi, but modern WIDS looks at Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular, and a bunch of IoT protocols. And the advantage to that is that because wireless attackers don't just focus on Wi-Fi anymore, you've got a full spectrum of coverage for the protocols most commonly used in an enterprise environment. And where that matters is as an early warning device, right? Because you can't jam, FCC says you can't jam anything. As an early warning device, you could then use a WIDS solution to flag potentially unauthorized or suspicious devices and interdict them, whether physically or with a network access control solution, or firewall them off or something. But at least you now have visibility into the wireless spectrum. Most solutions don't know how to deal with wireless, and most people don't understand that wireless is everywhere. We're sitting in an area with thousands of wireless devices whose emanations are going through us right now, and most people aren't aware of them.
You said, you pointed to one type in particular that's striking to me, given where we're going technologically, the glucose monitor. People are now walking around with wireless devices embedded into their bodies.
Yes.
What's the implication of that for the kinds of technology that you're talking about?
Well, consider this. Not only is it Bluetooth enabled, excuse me, not only are glucose monitors Bluetooth enabled, but so are pacemakers. And a pacemaker is very sensitive. If you can identify a pacemaker and attack it wirelessly such that the telemetry is off, just interrupting the telemetry, it could start causing health issues with the person wearing that pacemaker, right? So it's not just the fact that Bluetooth itself is attackable, it's the device that it's connected to. If I were to say, interrupt the telemetry of your glucose monitor so it keeps telling you that you need insulin shots and you overdose on insulin, I mean, that is a targeted attack against a potentially high-profile individual. And the thing about adversaries is they're using AI to create what are called target packages so that they can look at all your social, they can understand your habits, how to target you directly. And if you're wearing a glucose monitor that is right there and it's visible in some of your pictures, they can then do research and use that as an avenue of attack. So with AI comes a tremendous speed of targeting that was unheard of before. And so now you have to look at every aspect, and wireless just makes it that much easier for an adversary to target a specific individual and attack them.
Lieutenant General Greg Olson, U.S. Marine Corps retired, is Chancellor of the College of International Security Affairs at the National Defense University. It's great to see you, sir. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are you adapting your curriculum and the way that you teach, given the changes in the threat landscape, changes in technology, changes in the people that the United States works with, allies and partners around the world. How is all that influencing the way that you're teaching at NDU?
Well, thanks. First off, it's my privilege to represent Vice Admiral Pete Garvin here today on behalf of the 5 colleges, soon to be 6, of the National Defense University, where we, as the nation's premier strategic education institution, create U.S. forces, international partners, interagency partners, and industry partners into a team of future strategists to respond to future challenges. And your point about the future challenge is spot on. You know, war has an enduring nature. It will always be the province of primordial violence, chance, friction. The Clausewitzian trinity remains intact, but frankly, the character of war is changing. The battlefield effects that are being achieved in the Ukraine, in the Middle East, in all domains, mandate that we take a focus on the opportunities that are available across the joint warfighting concept, how the force fights, and against the backdrop of joint all-domain operations, the capabilities with which the force will fight, and then certainly integrating how industry will source that, how strategy will present that to those who take our national policy and the decisions therein, and then incorporating the requirements for the shared security of our allies and partners when we find shared interest or when we can help them to share our burdens by using their capabilities to our advantage and to theirs as well.
Cyber is more prominent than ever in warfighting environments, information warfare, political skills necessary. How is all of that influencing the way that you teach and what you teach?
One of the things you just reflected is the Chinese concept of 3 warfares. And certainly, as we look at our potential peer adversaries, as we approach windows where their capabilities are improving, we're going to outpace them in all of those warfares. The cyber domain, increasingly the cognitive domain, that realm of human interface with the information environment, is a place where we have great opportunities. We're doing directed research on those topics through our research arms, and increasingly we're looking for opportunities to wargame at all levels across the totality of the joint domains and joint environments to make sure that we keep pace and then outpace the threat. Fundamental to that is crafting thinking strategists, because theory provides you a basis for your understanding of the complex environments. It doesn't accompany you to the battlefield, as Clausewitz notes, but it certainly creates a baseline against which you can measure the uncertain environment that you find yourself in. And we're grounding strategists in theory and then in the practical application of all domain operations.
There's a lot of discussion here about a lot of these artificial intelligence and so on as tools. Are the tools that are necessary for your students to understand in the cyber realm, in the information warfare realm, and so on? Do you teach using those tools differently than you teach using kinetic tools or using human tools? Or is a tool just applied to a different end?
Well, you know, warfare is fundamentally a human endeavor. So whether it's a kinetic thing that kills people and breaks things, or whether it's an informational thing that enters the mind of an adversary decision taker and causes that adversary to take a decision that's not in their favor, we want to look at all those tools and how they complement each other and how they interoperate to generate warfighting advantage. We're going to be building a fully informed simulation environment where labs in the information environment, where labs in the cyber domain, fully informed up to the highest levels of classification, will permit us to wargame against the backdrop of a realistic environment. The other opportunity that we're going to take full advantage of is beginning this next academic year, the National Intelligence University will map over to the National Defense University and become the National Intelligence College, adding a 6th college to this premier strategic educational institution.
Who do you want to recruit to come to NDU moving forward to take advantage of what we talked about?
Well, thank you very much. And while I am a Marine, skilled in the arts of recruiting, I also know that we really have a geographic advantage being in Washington, D.C. Our campuses are open to interagency partners, they're open to international partners, and they're open to the partners across the joint force. increasingly, we're looking for opportunities to get industry fellows because the Secretary's emphasis on the defense industrial base can be best addressed in the strategic education of those who will be taking decisions as future captains of industry. So that rising lieutenant colonel through junior colonel, people who are going out to joint duty to populate the joint staff or combatant commands, lead joint task forces, that's the heart of our student population. But if you go to the foyer of Marshall Hall and look at the International Wall of Graduates, we have chiefs of defense. We currently have a graduate who is the president of a country. So we educate future international leaders as well. We hope to do the same with our industry fellows.
Nick Nyland's General Manager for U.S. for ARCIT. It's great to see you again, Nick. Thanks for joining me. A lot of discussion here about cyber resilience. What are you seeing? How is that evolving over time as all of the different factors for not just the special operations community, but more broadly for the national defense community?
Yeah, I think it's becoming core and critical to everything, every mission that happens. And we know that the adversary gets a vote, right? And the adversary is more and more clever, focused on EW and cybersecurity. And so we have to make sure that we're just as clever and even more so. And so making sure that cybersecurity is embedded by design, secure by design, is really important today. And we're actually seeing that happen. And so we're really excited to be part of this show to showcase how we are a critical part of cybersecurity everywhere.
The big factor that the leaders in uniform talk to me about is interconnectivity and interoperability.
Yes.
And the fact that they have a joint force now, all allies and partners are becoming even more of an emphasis than they have in the past, and so on. So you have information moving all over the place. What's the implication of that for cyber resilience?
Yeah, that is one of the most important questions that we're faced with today, because we don't have a great answer for it. As we fight as a allied force and in mission partner environments, one of the things that ARCIT focuses on, the most important thing that we focus on, is encryption. And so that's what we are. We're encryption experts, focused on cryptography, and really built, designed, architected for the tactical edge. And so we see this problem right up front in everything that we do, because there's two main ways of doing encryption today. One is through public key infrastructure. That's what you use for your Gmail, for your banking. We also use it at the tactical edge. Same concept, been around for 50 years. The other is hardware-based encryption, hardware-based crypto, so boxes. And what we bring to bear is a different model, because if you're in a mission partner environment, exchanging our certificates and our public keys with yours as mission allies is very cumbersome, very slow, and we have amazing people doing amazing things behind the scene to make it look seamless, but it's not seamless. Or we use hardware crypto and I can't give that to my allies, so now I can't talk to them. So then I have to change the classification level of the mission. Well, that's just unacceptable. So ARCIT software-based encryption allows that flexibility to work in mission partner environments to make sure that the mission stays the main goal, and that we're not changing cybersecurity and the security behind the scenes to, the security is not changing the mission, I guess I should say.
Yeah. So over time, how have you seen this evolve, and does that give anyone any insight into how the evolution will continue?
Yeah.
Or is that not knowable?
Oh, I think it's absolutely knowable. I think I go back to what I said before, which is secure by design. We're coming to the realization that security doesn't need to be an inhibitor. It can be an enabler. And so if we think differently, which is why I love coming to this show, because the SOF community, more than almost anybody else, focuses on the mission and the mission outcomes, and they're willing to think differently and not just hit the compliance checkboxes, not just do what always been done, but enable the mission with the best technology. And so that's why we love coming here, because that's exactly the trend we're seeing with the wars in Eastern Europe and the wars in the Middle East. We see that there is an imminent need to focus on the mission. And so what we're seeing is that secure by design focus, that willingness to try new things, and to realize that just because we've always done it for 50 years doesn't mean that's the way we need to do it forever. So that's what we're really excited about.
Final thought, what has driven that mind shift that you just described successfully, where you've seen it done successfully?
Yeah, I think it's a realization that what we're doing is actually isn't working, that we're pressure checking the environment that we exist in, the cybersecurity environment with unmanned systems and agentic AI and AI that's not just fairy dust, right? AI that's actually being useful. And so we're seeing that deployed at scale. And those systems that we're losing for on purpose, we can't put hardware-based crypto on it. We can't put PKI that doesn't scale to those environments. We can't put those in MPEs and mission partner environments. And so we're seeing that mission need lean on technology to force us to do things differently. And that's what we're really excited about, because we have a solution that allows you to see what's broken today. And so what is your cryptographic posture today? Where are my weaknesses? And then how do I actually solve those at the speed of software? And so that's very exciting for us. And that allows the warfighter, the operator to focus on the mission and not the security and stay at the mission classification level they're supposed to be at.
Lee Coping is Vice President of Global Sales Engineering for Science Logic. It's great to see you, Lee. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
How are you seeing organizations sync up the speed at which they want to move innovation-wise and the speed at which they can go because of the acquisition process? And a lot of times people say, well, it's back.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, especially always been an issue in technology, but I would say now it's compounded. You have two factors. You have the ever-present pressure of justification. There's also, not talked about widely, but of a turnover in procurement relative to the federal writ large. And so you have new experience combined with increasing pressures, which creates a natural slowdown. But technology is increased, especially with the everything increasingly moving to software. So you don't have lead times, you don't have as much supply chain. And so, yeah, they're on a collision course for efficiency. And I think really there's no one area to turn the screw to make it all better. But I think careful care has to be made within the procurement guidelines, which are to some extent somewhat fixed and slower moving, to create the flexibility to allow changes from the time you conceive a solution to the time it's procured. The technology cycle is too fast. You have to allow that flexibility so that you're not buying yesterday's technology, tomorrow.
A lot of military organizations say they've made progress in being able to tell industry, this is the problem we want you to solve, rather than writing a whole long list of requirements. Is that showing up on your?
It is, yeah. I think that's one of those, build the flexibility into the model. Don't focus on feature, function, spec, focus on outcome. And when you achieve an outcome, the technology in which you get there could be a bit more flexible, as long as the stated objective is the outcome. And as long as it's measurable, I think all parties are satisfied, when they achieve an outcome, how they can measure it, how they can justify the expenditure,
et cetera. This also seems to be helping the customer side, the government side, avoid being locked into something that 2 years from now isn't really on the edge of anything.
Well, I think a little bit of it's building that muscle memory, going from decades of feature, function, spec to, well, what is my outcome? And it really does challenge the thinking on that side to write a solid outcome-oriented requirements that is void of speeds and feeds and things that might lock you into a technology.
Are they getting better at understanding or coming to vendors to learn the art of the possible?
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, this is what we want, and
a lot more of that, I think, ever than there was before, because there was the rigidity of the procurement process where once an RFI hit, there was no dialogue. It was question, answer, formal response, formal solicitation. There is a lot more dialogue inherent to the process now, which just fosters a better outcome.
What are the questions that you get in those dialogue sessions? And maybe what are people asking you that they are not asking you that they should?
I think when you challenge them with an outcome-oriented objective, I mean, that's as long as a piece of string to some people. And so it really challenges them to think about the outcome, but almost as important, outcome is great. That's theoretical. How do we measure it? And getting into the details of how you're going to measure it without having a baseline is really a big challenge. And it's hard for, especially Department of War community, but elsewhere within government, to try and have a compare and contrast to commercial. So we could suggest all day long, these are best practices, but things work a little bit differently.
What's the best way that industry can serve that government customer by helping them to understand this is how to achieve the outcome that you want, maybe not in the exact way that you thought you were going to do it.
I think that is incumbent upon the industry to focus on outcomes as well. It doesn't matter who has what feature. It doesn't matter who's fast, who's slow. It really is about the outcome and trying to warrant a measurable SLO, SLA around, in our case, operational efficiency, right? There are certain levers which define that. And the more we focus on that and the less about the product, the more we're actually educating the customer on how to write that ringworm.
What do you see coming down the line for these folks from either a technology perspective or an acquisition perspective or whatever, that they don't have to think about today necessarily, but should be on their minds for the future?
I think they're already thinking about it today, but it's how they leverage things like AI in the procurement process outside of the technology realm per se. How do we apply that to doing more with less, creating those efficiencies, validating results? So their own use of AI in the process and how that may govern procurement and how they create the checks and balances, I think is really interesting. Some people are thinking about it today, but very few are kind of putting it into practice, so to speak. So early days.
Brigadier General Matthew Tracy's Commanding General of Education Command and President of Marine Corps University. Sir, welcome. It's great to have you here. Thanks. Talk a little bit before we went on the air about how you're trying to change the process of military education, not just for the Marine Corps, but more broadly. What are you doing to try to do that, and what's the outcome that you're going for by making a change?
Yeah, thanks. I believe that Marine Corps University and Marine Corps Education Command is really at the forefront of what we see as the fourth epoch of education. Working backwards, I think the Stansfield-Turner Revolution at the Naval War College post-Vietnam is where we professionalized education and we adapted the modalities and the curriculum of a national security, liberal arts education curriculum with the case study and Socratic method of reading deeply on papers and books, discussing, and then synthesizing those ideas. But with each epoch, you have changes in technology, changes in enemy capabilities, and then social and societal changes. I think we're at another inflection point, and MCU is fully overhauling its curriculum and methodology. We believe we'll be fighting as a true joint task force below the level of a COCOM. There'll be several of these joint task force, and the requirement for our Marine sailors, airmen, soldiers to be able to coordinate from cislunar to subsurface all the joint domains in a true integrated fashion while balancing the warfighting function will be the coin of the education realm moving forward. That's top secret education with top secret professors in a top secret SCIF with top secret professors. That is where we are going now, and in 2027, starting here in August, our command and staff curriculum will be at the top secret level.
Before we talk about the changes that you're instituting in more depth, what's driving factors to the inflection point that you just described? Are they internal factors? Are they external factors? What got you to where you and your team determined that these were the changes that you needed to make?
Like any military organization, change and adaptation should be driven by the enemy and a response to. We've enjoyed a long period in which in each domain, the United States has had an overwhelming advantage. Enemy capabilities are getting to a place in which their ability to deny an area or deny access to that area are now rich enough that each one of the domains are contested. Consequently, our joint task force are going to have to match and find and produce advantage in one domain to beget either a maneuver or logistics in another domain. So by an understanding of how these integrate is how we're going to maintain our advantage. It's now becoming more complex, and our education is going to have to reflect that.
What's the significance of moving to a top secret environment in the new year?
Well, it's incredibly significant, transformational, and disruptive, right? If you have an education system set up mapping to a liberal arts model for a national security master's degree, moving it all at the unclassed level, moving into a top secret arena, that means you need a different classroom. You need professors with different credentials. You have a much greater burden on each one of the services that are attempting to do this. So that investment, there better be a winning return.
Mm-hmm. What will you need to do logistically to execute? What will you need to do tactically? And what will you need to do strategically to implement your vision?
Great question. You need strategic level buy-in from really the joint force and across the education ecosystem. Like Marine Corps University can't solve this problem or provide this product that solves this for the joint force. This has to be in concert with my fellow university professors. And we have great thought and action leaders right now with Vice Admiral Garvin at NDU, Lieutenant General Tully down there at Air War College. They are in league to proceed at the pace that resources can achieve. At the operational level, I'd have to say at the service or at the fleet headquarters level, like the people to teach this don't really exist, right? So we have to develop, now we have world-class educators and our PhDs and our military faculty are world-class educators. I need to get them to the places to learn this, and they need to go out into a serious faculty development program. Meanwhile, while we're in this messy middle, I need the fleet headquarters, I need these JTF headquarters to send me back their best for their 1 week of immersive training in whatever domain that is. So at that operational level, I need to be in concert and in cooperation with 3- and 4-star admirals and generals who are out there doing the thing and get that G35, J35 to come back and help us get through this period while my PhDs. And lastly, at the tactical logistics level, a SCIF and a SCIF classroom where professors are building research in the TS space, students are writing papers at the TS space, where they go in, learn the material, cannot take it home. At the tactical level of actually learning, this is extremely difficult and a new era for us.
How long will it take you to get a sense of whether your instructors are delivering the kind of instructions that you want them to, and that the students are receiving the kind of education that you want them to?
Well, I thought I have like a year or two, and then like March happened.
Yeah.
We shut down the school last month, and there was a strong enough demand signal for students who were educated in joint all-domain operations at the TS level to go assist here in Tampa. That allowed me to stress test the curriculum that they've been given all year. And they performed above my expectations. We're not satisfied. And what they got this year was about 210 hours. Next year, it will be the curriculum, and they're going to get a full year. So we've used the lessons we learned here in April as a springboard to get to that place that I think we need to be.
How do you provide an environment for the students to be able to learn and maybe need to relearn on some occasions, while still instilling in them what they need to be able to take out to be effective warriors when they graduate, more effective warriors?
So when I talk about this fourth epoch and this revolution in education, it's really twofold: curriculum and methodology. And I've just talked about the curriculum, but the methodology which heretofore has been like read paper, listen to lecture, talk about paper, synthesize, write a paper. With the technological advancements in wargaming, cloud compute capability, the complexity of the war games, we can now, in an all-domain space, war game against each other, war game staffs against staffs, and then do this internationally. So regardless of where you're sitting physically, we can now use read paper, lecture, step into the war game, and then fight a thinking enemy to develop that cognitive repetition of critical decision making, strategy making, and the development of military judgment in an all-domain fashion.
Will Layton is Senior Advisor for Public Sector at Sensing. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me, Will. One of the big challenges I keep hearing about at events like this is innovation is on one track speed-wise, acquisition is on another track speed-wise, much farther behind the innovation. What have you seen be successful to try to sync those tracks up?
Well, in our case, what we're trying to do is help get to results when doing analytics. When you're in this community and you're looking for people and fraud and bad guys, you want to onboard data as quickly as possible. So you need to go through the acquisition speed, but then you got to onboard the data. So Sensing is an any resolution company. We help people understand who's who and who's related to who in data. But what we do is, because we don't have a machine learning model where you have to train everything, all of our bringing data on board is real time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The advantage to that seems pretty obvious to the end user because they can use this stuff the minute they see it.
Yeah, a lot of our competitors will literally take months to onboard a data set. We can do it in hours or days, depending on it. As an example, we want our data in what we call sensing compliant JSON, which basically is a form that our software understands. And then we, then you can onboard real time as soon as it's in that format. So we have a lot of people that publish data in that format. So then it's real easy to onboard data, and that's a big advantage for us. And at the end of the day, it's for the mission, bring data on board quickly, get to results so they can see that where the needle in the needle stack is.
Yeah. How has that ability to get that data to the person that needs it changed as the proliferation of data has increased and as the types of things that people want to manage has increased?
Well, as you can imagine, massive amounts of data. We're talking about billions of data records. And so we had to focus our technology on scaling out, scaling up in the cloud or on-prem, and help them get billions instead of millions. You know, 20 years ago, it was 10 million. Now it's 10 billion. And so we really focused our innovation on speed of acquisition of data so that we could get to results.
Does it matter where the person consuming the data is consuming the data? I'm referring to the discussion around edge computing and edge data.
Well, most of the stuff we're doing is very large scale, which wouldn't be at the edge. It'd be more in the core. But what happens is a lot of times they'll bring the data from the edge in, we'll resolve it, and then we'll either share the results or they can query the results even from remote.
What are the biggest obstacles that people are running into in analyzing, parsing all of this data that they're getting?
Well, the challenges are across language, across, different countries, and everybody has a lot of data, but it's all in different formats. And so the challenge is getting it into a form that's consumable, and especially when you've got a bunch of different, phone numbers are in different formats, email addresses, names, people use different names, they use aliases. That's really where Sensing comes in, because we resolve that and disambiguate it across all different, well, not all different languages, but quite a few languages.
Yes. The challenges that people continue to discuss over time, especially regarding that acquisition versus innovation track that we talked about earlier, are really getting from the requirements to the delivery. What have you seen to help close that loop?
Well, the best example I could give was we had a user conference last year, and the founder of opensanctions.org, got in front of some of the community and said, "Hey, look, you can now download our data in Sensing format." And while they were on stage, somebody from this community onboarded the data, got to results while he was still up presenting. So innovation really was how we got to where we are, to do things differently, do it at scale. We say human smart at scale, but then deliver it in a format so that people can onboard data and get to results.
What's over the horizon for people in this room and people in this community that maybe they're not faced with today, but is coming down the pike and they should start to be aware of?
There's so much data becoming available. Like I just met a new company that has a bunch of data from countries in Africa as an example. So you're going to just start seeing more and more data being published from a lot of different countries, or even internal to the United States as well.
Will Layton of Sensing. Thanks for joining me for this Innovation in Government program presented by Carahsoft. If you missed any of it, you can watch the show in its entirety on our website, fedgovtoday.com, or the FedGov Today YouTube channel. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks again for watching. Good night.